that was when the heaviest jargon was going on, where they're like, you know, get the gigahertz and move it two frames to the left. Okay, we're gonna go off axis on filter 27. All right, and then move that 2 gigawatts upwards. And you're like, this could all be bullshit, but I don't care because I'm like, my heartbeat is going, and I'm like, what's going on? I was into with your best friends Trey Sterling and Matt, the film Schmucks.
All right, guys. Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Film Schmucks. Always, we have the lovely Matt and the lovely Trey. Not in a gay way. I just think you guys are both handsome. Anyway, we chose a movie, or I guess we didn't choose the movie. It was Matt who chose this movie, right? No, Trey, you chose this movie.
Trey chose the movie. I just said it was a good pick, and I still stand by that.
Yeah. Okay, so Trey picked this movie called Contact from 1997 with Jodie Foster and Matthew McConaughey. And Trey, I'm going to give you the floor since you're the one who picked it. What did you think about Contact?
I love
it when it starts like this.
I love this movie. I'm just going to get it out of the way. I was going to watch it again last night because we were supposed to review it last week, or we talked about reviewing it last week, and I already watched it, and I fell asleep. It was like 1 a.m. on Thursday last week, and I fell asleep with 10 minutes left. And I'm like, you know what? I'm just gonna watch this again. I love this movie so much, and the week rolled by, and I couldn't, but I watched the last 30 minutes today.
Okay.
And even though I don't love the last 15, 20 minutes, there's some parts of it I love and some parts I can throw away.
Okay.
But overall, this movie is spectacular. I mean, it's story driven. I mean, what can you say? I don't know. I love it. Let's get into the details. Matt, what did you think?
Well, I kind of...
Your favorite director, by the way, right? Is Robert Zemeckis?
No, well, this is a common misconception. Robert Zemeckis directed my favorite movie, which is Back to the Future. Yeah. However, I do like him as a director. He's got a good track record, and I would definitely put him up there. Some people call him the poor man's Steven Spielberg, but let's be honest. If you just go toe for toe, Back to the Future as a movie is better than any Spielberg movie, in my opinion. Now, he also did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is great. Yeah, shit, I forgot about that one. Cut it. No. We
Castaway.
Anyway, Castaway, a lot of other movies, but the point is, that aside, I do like Robert Zemeckis. I was glad to watch this one. I like space movies. I like alien type movies. I'd never seen this one, and it's always been up there. I pretty much agree with you, Trey. I don't know if I'd be as high praiseworthy if it was spectacular. I definitely liked it, but it's one of those things. There's some things I loved about it, and there's a couple of things that I didn't like about it. So that I could just like take those out of the movie and I'd be happy, kind of thing. But overall, I thought it was a good pick. It was a good watch. I mean, it's a 2.5 hour movie, and I was engaged the whole time for the most part. Yeah. So we can get more into the deets, but Sterling.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm gonna turn heel today.
Yes.
No. I'm kidding. But I don't think I like.
It'd be weird if he did on Contact. This is the one he finally turned heel on.
No, I think this is a solid movie with some things that really impressed me, considering how old the movie is.
Mm-hmm.
I think the effects are pretty good for the most part, with one exception. And I think Jodie Foster has a really good performance, and she carries the movie in a lot of ways, for sure.
Yeah.
And one thing that did impress me about the movie is that there's a lot of scientific jargon and a lot of things that I don't really understand the specifics, but I think the movie did a good job not making me feel like totally lost in all of that jargon.
Yeah.
And it makes sense, by the way, why there's so much of that, because obviously they collaborated with Carl Sagan on this movie. And unfortunately, he passed away before it came out. So, I would bet that the science is pretty sound in this movie overall, especially during that time.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that's one thing that impressed me. there's one character in the movie that kind of took me out of it, and we'll go more into it later.
I wonder if it's
But
the character that I don't like.
it bordered on cartoony villain level to me.
Oh,
Um,
no.
and uh, but anyway, overall, it's a solid film. I liked it.
Well, I think a good diving off point would be we kind of all were nodding there about the way the movie's aged. We watch a lot of old movies on Film Schmucks, and I thought I was impressed from the beginning of the movie where even just the zooming out of the galaxy and the solar system and stuff, I was like, you know what? If I was watching a movie nowadays, I don't think that I could tell you I don't think that I could tell you, oh, this looks really old. The concept is a little outdated now because you see that in a lot of space movies where it's slowly zooming out of Earth and the universe. But I was like, oh, that the little, even right off the bat, the opening credits, the effects were pretty good. And I'd say for the movie, I'd say it's like a 90% hit where there's a lot of times where I'm like, when it would show the spheres turning and stuff in the distance, it looked pretty good. It held up pretty well. Obviously, the very ending where it was heavy effects, you could see a lot of the aging. But for the most part, earlier in the movie, a lot of the visual effects, I was like, oh, held up pretty well, in my estimation.
Well, that's where when she's on the her imaginary world or whatever that she's put into. That I think as far as the colors, they look really good, but the green screen composition didn't look good. I felt, you know what I'm talking about, the very last.
Yeah.
Sequence.
No, that's what I was thinking. That looked a little off-putting.
Mm-hmm.
Like her on the beach.
The structures. On the beach. Yeah.
I think I would disagree solely based on the fact that this is the aliens projecting what's in her mind. And even they could have used the real actor, but they used like a digital version of the actor. So I think it was, to me, I didn't mind it because it was just their rendition of it, kind of projecting it to her, through the technology. So it didn't take me out of the movie at all. For me anyway.
Well, her dad looked fine to me. It's just the way
they were
the composition
on the background. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only
it's
thing
not
really.
that it didn't take me out of the movie. It's just that it just didn't age as well as the other effects in the movie. Because I think if it was modern, it wouldn't look like that. I think it wouldn't look the same as that. And so, I think even that though to me is impressive for 1997. It was impressive, I'd say. Yeah. So, yeah. Also, I just wanted to say. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Either of you.
I'll just say this. Obviously, this movie, you can definitely see the influence this movie had, especially in Interstellar and Arrival, for sure. I think with Interstellar, the relationship between the dad and the daughter definitely carries on in Interstellar. And it's kind of funny that Matthew McConaughey's in both movies. It's kind of a nice connection there. But, I think
nice,
that's one thing I appreciate about this is I like seeing movies that were kind of the focal point of the influence for a lot of other movies in the future.
And for it being like a movie that you could tell, I've a lot of times you watch movies that sort of set trends or kind of are inspirational and it feels contrived and cliche, even though it might be the first one to do it. You've seen so many things of it. I didn't think this movie felt that way, even though you could go, oh, okay, this is obviously an inspiration for a lot of things. I was like, it felt fresh even being, 25 years old. So, yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, going back to Arrival, every time I recently watched this, I totally could see this being kind of Arrival being a sequel to this. Like, honestly, like them actually arriving to Earth. I mean, we'll probably eventually watch Arrival and talk about it, but I think they contrast each other pretty well. I mean, if you've seen them both, but that's what impressed me. Like, I think the dialogue and, like you said, it's probably pretty accurate with science then. I mean, obviously things change over the years. So I would actually I wish there was a direct sequel. I mean, maybe in 20 years, like because of how technology changes. But Yeah, I can't wait to talk about Arrival because there's a lot of connections, as Sterling said.
Yeah, I haven't seen Arrival, so I'm excited, and
Oh,
maybe it's better that I saw this one first and then can watch Arrival because it'll be interesting
yeah.
to compare it to. I was going to talk about the jargon because I wrote a note down. I think one of my favorite moments in the movie, and this I got to say this about this movie in general, it feels very 90s, and I don't mean that in an outdated way. I mean, doesn't it have the same feel as like Twister or what else did I wrote a couple Independence Day. Do you know what I mean? Where there's like a national thing going or something. I guess Twister's not, but the scene when it finally happens, right? You get the zoom in on her eyes and she finally hears the noise. I thought that scene was so great, and it really reminded me of like others kind of 90s movies, but I think it did it well. That was when the heaviest jargon was going on, where they're like, you know, get the gigahertz and move it two frames to the left, okay? We're going to go off axis on, filter 27, all right? And then move that, 2 gigawatts upwards. And you're like, this could all be bullshit, but I don't care because I'm like, my heartbeat is going and I'm like, what's going on? I was into it. I was like, and that's a great scene. And that's when it's the most dense, as I think, as far as them saying shit you don't know what they're talking about. But it doesn't matter because you know what's happening and you're interested. Even though, and I, like you said, it probably was accurate, but not understanding any of the stuff with the audio frequencies or anything they're talking about. That I actually was pretty impressed that they didn't do a lot of technology bullshittery. I mean, there's a little bit of it, but there wasn't a lot of the kind of bullshit you would see in these types of movies when they're looking at computers. It all looked like pretty legit, the signals and the different screens they had. I think maybe when the whole cube thing, there's
three-dimensional.
The three-dimensional, there were times where it was like, as if they were doing this stuff just by going typing in the keyboard, but in reality it was like, this feels like a slideshow that someone put together beforehand, but it kind of was because when Haddon's showing the cube thing, he's presenting it to her. So there's not, that's normally in these type of movies where I would be very nitpicky, and I really wasn't because I was like 1997. We're watching it almost 30 years later, and it didn't look. They weren't doing a lot of zoom in on. They did one zoom in on that thing, but it actually looked like it made sense because of the data they had. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like here's a shitty security camera, zoom in and focus in or what is it called? What they do it in Blade Runner really bad, and it's kind of a meme now where it's like a certain phrase where it's like section that part off and then it somehow it becomes more and more high definition as they zoom in. Doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But
yeah. I mean, one thing I really like about this film is that it really trying to find the right word, but it brings the sci-fi element and the human element together pretty well. I like how it starts off with a very human story. With the first act, obviously learning about how she got into her career and her father passing. I thought it was really good bringing that in and kind of showing the human side of it because it's not all science and people have lives and there's always an evolution to not just science but to the human aspect of it. So I really like that.
And they kind of, I agree, and they kind of closed on it too. They kind of went back to it a little bit where it starts off, her interest in science is very personal. She lost her mom, and then she loses the dad, and she's very into the radio signals. And then the end of the movie, it ends being very personal again, which I'm sure we'll get into, but obviously it becomes a very personal thing, her story going through the wormhole and all of that. It's like, it's a very global, big thing. Everyone in the world's paying attention to it. By the end of it, it's just back to her caring about what she cares about and believing what she believes and passing those ideas on to the next generation. So no connection to Star Trek.
It doesn't just humanize it through the relationship between her and her dad. It also kind of humanizes, again, with faith and belief. The conversation she has with McConaughey's character, his belief in God, and she doesn't really believe in God, but then her ultimate beliefs are tested in a really interesting way, and she kind of goes on an arc
Yeah.
By the end, she completely relates to Matthew McConaughey's character because he talks about how he had an experience that he just
Yeah.
can't explain, and she goes through the same thing, and she can't prove it, but she believes it, and I just thought that was kind of an interesting way of touching on that kind of philosophy. Yeah,
Yeah. I agree. I was worried a little bit about how they were presenting the arc because there's parts of the movie where it almost seemed like I was watching a Christian flick or something. I was like, is this going to end with her rejecting science and accepting God or something? Now, but what I
that's not
loved,
dead.
it didn't make because I was sitting there going like, this is based on a Carl Sagan book, right? Like what is happening? But what I loved about what I really liked at the end was, and we can get into the her and McConaughey later because that's where I'll probably turn heel. But but as far as what you were saying on the ending scene, what I love in the testimony at the end when they're like, you don't have any proof of this, instead of it being a thing where she goes, you know what, I don't, but that doesn't matter, goddammit, because faith is important. Instead, she stayed true to her scientific principles and said, no, like, I don't have evidence of that. And if I were in your shoes, I would do the exact same thing. I would be just as skeptical, and that's important. I kind of like that because I really thought they were going to turn it the other way, where it's like, you shouldn't be skeptical, man. It's all about faith, dude. And I like that she's a scientist and she stays a principled scientist to the end, but personally, she's more empathetic toward the religious guy because now she's like, oh, now I have my own thing that I don't have the evidence for, but I believe. But she's also saying that people should be skeptical of that you shouldn't believe her based on just her testimony.
That's what I was wishing she would do because in her mind, her memory, it is evidence. I was hoping like every time I watch this, there's two things, but the first one we're talking about now is when that James Earl Woods is like grilling her. I'm like, I wish that they would have that character come back at him with, well, do you have any proof about God? Because the whole thing was about you're not religious. I'm like, you don't have any evidence.
Yeah.
But she does. She does have evidence to herself and the recording. But they it's all political. They hide that.
I forgot about that. They do that at the very end. There really is evidence there. But
what I wish, like, well, hey, you're all religious. You wanted a religious guy who got bombed out. Where's your evidence about God?
And maybe for a character arc that would have been better storytelling. But because of the fact that they were trying so hard to make a point about faith, which I don't like when movies try to make a point too obvious, but they did do that. I was glad that they actually had a pretty reasonable, because like I said, I really thought she was going to throw the scientific principles out the window, but instead she kind of was like, she got both. Because now she's like, okay, yes, you should be skeptical. I would be skeptical if I was you. You should believe things based on evidence, but also you should be empathetic towards people's personal beliefs, like my personal belief I have now that I went through this wormhole. So yeah, I thought they did that pretty well because I was worried about it earlier in the film on where it was going. But I do agree, if they did do it the other way, it wouldn't have been terrible for a movie's sake. It probably just would have annoyed me as far as the point they're making. But that's more, that's less to do with the filmmaking and more to do with me. So.
One thing that I always notice now when I'm watching this, at the beginning it gets emotional. They kind of cut back and forth. At the end of the funeral, the priest is leaving the wake or whatever, and he says something to her as a girl. Do you guys remember that?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I do. She's on the steps. Yeah.
He just says something sappy, something really sappy.
I'm trying to remember what she says.
It's not your fault that
Oh,
blah,
he's
blah,
like,
blah.
he's like, you should accept things. You should accept. Yeah. Sometimes you just have to accept things. That's what God does. And she goes, but I should have put the medicine in the cabinet, jackass. She doesn't say jackass, but she's.
I always wish she would like. I'm like, I was just thinking on the other night. I'm like, I wish you would just go away, Cracker Jack, and get up. I got work to do.
I'm a scientist now. Cracker Jack. Oh, that's great.
Oh man, but let's talk about her the evolution. I mean her journey.
Yeah.
to me, you say, I know we'll talk about it, Sterling. Your little nitpick about the cartoon Bible thumper. Um, but to me,
He
I
looked like
have a really
Edge.
big. What's that?
I was just gonna say it before I forget it. The Bible guy, the bomber, doesn't he kind of look like Edge a little bit? He looked like a WWE character to me. I was like, is that Hefe Blanca? Who is this guy? Anyway, sorry, keep going.
Where was I? What is the Bible? Oh, my issue is with the science, how they write the scientist. The one that cut her off, in
Oh,
Mexico.
Drumlin. Yeah.
Yeah, Drummond. I got an issue. We'll talk about that. But I like how they show like she's really really strong-willed. She's going for years trying to find funding, and then she finds Haddon, and she does this big speech. And
Yeah.
I really like that
I
part where it
liked
just
her
shows.
too. She was great because think about it. If it was a different actress who just didn't play it quite as well, I feel like this movie. Honestly, I think Jodie Foster makes this movie. Doesn't make the movie. It's still there's a lot of great things about the movie, but her character is the thing that kept me engaged with the movie. I feel like if she wasn't in it, or if the performance wasn't as good from her, I probably would have been less engaged with it. I would have been a little, I would have been a little couple feet back from it. But you want to talk about? Maybe we should go through the characters because there's a lot of characters in this movie, and like once again, kind of like an Independence Day type thing. It reminded me of Independence Day a lot because it kept kind of like, other than Jodie Foster's sort of the main character it's following, but there's these movies where it kind of you're seeing a lot of different characters and you don't really know who's the good guy and who's the bad guy. I want to talk about the Drumlin or whatever guy, Drumlin. I didn't think he was that bad. If you really look at him on paper, he wasn't a terrible guy. And that's where I think they put James Wood in, because the first part of the movie, he even says something that I thought was super reasonable. He's like, look, when he's at the party, he's talking and he's like, look, I feel bad, but we got to stop the research on some of this stuff because we don't know where it's going to go. And these are taxpayer dollars that are paying for this. We need to make sure we're doing stuff that's like practical. And I was like, you might disagree with that and say, hey, the funding should go, but it's like, that's not evil. That's actually a pretty reasonable opinion, pretty conservative actually, but it's just an interesting point where it's like, hey, and I was like, okay, now he does have moments where probably the most is when he's kind of he's bullshitting the people who are trying to pick who gets to go. He was sort of bullshitting them a little bit by being like, he kept mentioning God, he was doing a real George Bush and just pretending he loves God. And it was like, that's
the least of my problems with him is that part. He's just playing the game that they created, right? And I like how you picked like the least offensive thing he does throughout the movie. I like that.
No, I was just saying that the way they portray, just to clarify, the way they portray him there is very bad guy in a movie where it's like, we can find aliens, man. And he's like, it's not practical. I'm shutting it down. And it's like, I was like, they could have made what actually my main point there is that they could have made him more of an asshole, because I was sitting there I was like, he doesn't seem like that bad of a guy. He seems pretty reasonable.
Well,
go ahead, Mr.
Just for 1 second. One thing that kind of helped him not become a clear-cut bad guy was whenever they find that noise, and things start kind of jumping in motion, he actually starts to like help Jodie Foster's character,
and defending her to James from
defending her.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that like clears him of everything. That just makes him a little bit more of a gray character.
Exactly. He wasn't a straight up bad guy. He just wasn't like an evil bad guy. And even when he talks to her, all right, Trey, what hit us with it, because I want to see what you're talking about. What you
finish your thought? I'll get to it.
No, I'm just saying. He was a bit of an asshole when he talks to her at the thing, and he's like, look, I'm just playing the game. And you're like, and she kind of makes a good point where she's like, well, I thought we made he's like, this is the world we live in, and he's a cynical guy in that moment. But he's not a villain. He's not like a Disney villain or something. He's actually like more gray than not. And that's the thing. Like, that's the thing was he was never a clear cut, like immoral guy. He was always just like he seemed.
The NSA guy was more
the James Wood was the guy. I keep saying the actor, but I think his name was like Slick or Kits or something like that. But that guy, there was points where he really was being evil for no reason, and I actually have a nitpick about that.
I'm looking around like, did we watch the same movie? I mean, what in the world is going on here? Maybe because I've seen the movie 6, 7, 8 times, I see through all the bullshit haze. Drumlin is a clear-cut bad guy. Clear-cut.
Well, what? I mean, give some examples because we gave examples.
I will. James Earl Jones Woods. He's just being a government guy, and you guys say he's helping her. He is overshadowing her. I'm going to mention it later. I'll mention it now. I don't know what the point of the movie was pushing this male centric. Like there was no women power. This was maybe that's why they did it. Because they do it later on in the movie. They did the first scene when he shows up, like, hey, I'm the man, I'm in charge, this is my find, yada, yada, yada. Like, there's no women power. Maybe that's what this movie is trying to show, that, hey, women should have power. Women should have a voice. So James Earl Jones was not the problem until the very end. So to show you guys, Drumlin, he's trying to say, like, he's taking over being all macho. Okay. So that's one of the lower end spectrums. The White House. There's 3 or 4 scenes, especially when he gets appointed the finder of the finder of the noise, and he goes up and says how he found it, and he could have been, obviously it's a game to him, right? So that was him being a bad guy. He's talking over her in meetings, saying this is what we found. When she Haddon gives her the map, he takes credit for it. He is clearly the bad guy throughout this whole movie, and he deserved what he got.
I think look, me and Sterling, and I won't speak for Sterling.
I think you're trolling me, guys.
We're not trolling you. Here's what I'm saying. I won't speak for Sterling, but what me and Sterling are saying is that he's more gray of a character than a clear-cut villain. And
he's an asshole.
Every example you gave was like, he was kind of a dick. He talked over her a little bit here. It's just not. It's just not clear-cut. Like, oh, he's a villain. Like, I mean, he's not a Cruella de Vil. He's not a Scar. He's not trying to kill someone. He's not trying to like. He's not sabotaging her or anything like that. When did he sabotage her?
He's taking all the credit. So did he find the noise?
No,
No, he did not. Thank you. Did he?
And everyone knows she found the noise. No one ever says that Drumlin found the noise. No one ever says that in the movie. The president doesn't say that. She says it. No, everyone knows she found it. I mean, even she herself says that several times in the movie. Later on, the whole government council people who meet, they all talk about that she found the noise, so she's going to be on the meeting. That's what the lady said. I don't know if she's the president.
Yeah, I don't know her name.
Yeah, and who cares? She's a woman. But
the head lady,
yeah,
she gave him the credit. Like he was in charge when the person in charge when the noise was found, and he knew that was going to happen. Obviously, like we're making it, it's in the writing, right?
Yeah.
So that's fine. You can give that one away.
I'll give you this. Because we could argue about it all day. I'll give you this. You've seen the movie more. There's probably more moments that I'm not thinking about or missing where it was more obvious that he was being a dick. But I still think my point stands, though, that, like, Drumlin just is not, like, a pure evil character. He's not... He seems... He's understandable, and even when he's being a... Like... Even when he's being a dick and he talks to her, he doesn't seem like evil or cold-hearted or even evil-willed toward her. He just seems maybe a little selfish. You know what I mean? But it's like I just don't see it go. I just don't see him as like a villain. I just see him as like kind of a morally gray character who's a little self-centered.
That's what they want you to feel.
Well, then he fucking duped me, all right? He duped me too. If he duped the American people, he duped me. He found that signal.
Yeah, here's my point. My point there is in the meeting when they found she was given the instructions, he interrupted her and essentially took credit. We found this. No. She found this or was given this. So yeah, can you defend that one at least? I mean, give me something.
No.
I'm giving you that. I'm giving you that because I haven't seen the movie enough, so I don't know exactly what part you're talking about. I'm not saying it didn't happen. But yeah, the blueprints.
Yeah,
where he interrupts her in the meeting
and he says, "We found this."
That just came off kind of dickish because they're both presenting the thing together, and he was kind of interrupting her. You know, I was kind of dickish, but it just so I agree with you. That was a dick move to interrupt her when she's talking.
I'm not discounting anything that you were saying, Trey. Like I didn't like Drummond as a character because like he is the antagonist to Jodie Foster's character for sure. But it was interesting to see that there were some moments where he wasn't being a clear-cut villain. Like, not every moment with him was a bad moment. There were some moments that made it a little bit more gray and a little bit more nuanced. So that's all I am trying to say.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we just see it differently. I think for me, he's an asshole throughout the whole way. I'll say this, and it's to the script. It's obviously we can argue semantics, and I have a good point, you have a good point. You know, we have. My thing is, what's the point? I wrote this down. What's the point of bringing her back in the fold when she got the had and found the blueprints, and then she brings it, so she's back in the fold. She's important again, just to take her out again for him to take credit. Say, would she interrupt him? I'm like, for me, we already hate that character Drumlin. So why did they have to do it again for us to hate him even more? For him, like I just thought that for me, that's a nitpick for me is the script. Like, we already hate the guy. Why are we just compounding it?
There was a couple of times where they kind of did that, like not even with Drummond, but also with like the kind of like, oh, is Jodie Foster going to go on the mission? No, but wait, now she has another chance to go on the mission, and it's like there were a couple of times where it was like, I don't know how important the false thing was other than a surprise, which was fun in the movie. But there were a couple times where there was some repetitive nature to some of the points in it, or not points, but just things that happen.
Yeah.
So I see what you're saying.
I mean, well, I don't know if we want to continue this discussion about clear-cut villains, but
well, here's my problem. If we disagree this much about Drumlin, then you guys are going to hate what I have to say about Matthew McConaughey.
Certainly,
anyway, I'll just say this. I think the best argument for a clear-cut villain is the Christian terrorist. That's all I got to say.
That's true. Yeah.
Okay. Clearly, he did the most evil act in the entire movie, and there's almost no justification for what he did. You know, so anyway.
Yeah. I agree with that. He was really wacky.
He was wacky. That's actually one of my nitpicks, and we can get into nitpicks later. But I want to say
the way he would stare at Jodie was
it was a little weird. But it's like I'm also like he had the cadence and the look of a WWE character at times, which I thought was funny. But also I didn't quite understand security wise how he got up there. Or anything, and we could get into it later. But
expensive thing ever.
Literally all eyes. I mean, you would think this would be more security, more maximized security than anything ever made. And this guy put his hair up in a ponytail and put a hat on and walked up there, and I'm like, what? And it's also wasn't it like out in the water, like on like a little island or something? Like everyone else is watching it from the beach. I'm like, did he? So he somehow bypassed security, got on a helicopter. You have to be the only way you can get there is by helicopter. I mean, he lands there.
He's white.
Shit, you're right. Fuck.
Cut it.
This was the 90s.
Exactly.
No, it was good. But he was a funny character just staring her down when she's driving by in the limo. These scientists are all assholes. Basically, that's what he said.
Well, So that is definitely one of the cartoonier characters. I had mentioned one, but now that you're talking about it, it's like, I didn't care for that character. But he was throwaway. He's only in like 3 scenes.
He's there to kill Drumlin.
Yeah,
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Um, I think the character I had the most issues with him personally. I didn't really like Haddon all that much. He actually kind of reminded me of like Jeff Bezos, like he kind of looked like Jeff Bezos to
Nah,
me a little bit.
oh no, I thought he looked like Howie Mandel, but
I
I
mean, same difference.
yeah, it's basically the
Oh
same guy.
my
I
god.
I have to say, I as much as I disagreed with Trey about that, I think me and Trey are gonna have to turn heel on you on that one because I thought Haddon was a great character. I liked him a lot. I thought he was great. I thought his
Okay.
delivery was great. He is very
No,
comic
okay, the
book
actor is
character.
fine.
I see what you're, John Hurt.
Yeah, the actor is
V for
fine.
Vendetta,
Like I
baby.
didn't, yeah, I didn't have a problem with his performance. It's just it kind of set a bad taste in my mouth a little bit the way they introduced him because again, I know it's a science fiction movie, but it kind of annoys me when movies do this. Like he has like a PowerPoint like presentation already set up about Jodie Foster's life, and he edited it. I don't know. It's just it was weird to me seeing him edit an entire presentation about
He
her
didn't edit
life,
it.
and
He
it just
paid someone to edit it, dude.
I
Are you kidding
okay,
me?
same difference. Same difference. I'm just saying it
Yeah.
reminded me of like Godzilla King of the Monsters whenever there's a scene
Yeah.
where there's exposition happening and for some reason while the main character's exposition is happening, they had this edited video already set up explaining things and I don't know, it's just kind of a
What
trope I don't
it
like.
it was not
So
there to explain things. It was to show how
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 resourceful he
powerful the guy
was.
was.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I understand.
resourceful.
I understand. I just thought it was
Well,
cheesy. That's all I have to say.
Oh
I think
man.
I
What kind of
think
cheese are you eating?
it ain't Gouda. This I kind of I see what you're saying as far as like he was a little cartoonish and that presentation was kind of what we were talking about earlier as far that's part of what I was talking about where it's like someone put together like a slideshow type thing. But it's
Yeah.
forgivable. And also, where I do disagree with you is I actually did like the character. And because I liked the character, it made me look past any of that. I wish that maybe there was a little more motivation from the character. If we learned a little more about him, then I would have liked a little more. But we only see him twice, and he basically just seems like a rich guy who's like, I like living in space. And then he really helps Jodie Foster out and we don't really know what
Sure.
the motivation was other than he kind of liked her.
Yeah.
He thought he liked her as a scientist or whatever. But it's all forgiven to me. I thought he was a cool character. I actually wrote it down as a note that I liked him as a character because I thought he was so like weird.
Well,
I
first just
yeah, I'm with you, Matt. I I love this character, and it just giving me a headache. That nitpick. I just yeah, you're right. He's not eating good. He's eating American cheese
Let's.
and the
I
what?
I want to get this out of the way. Look, me and Sterling, you hated a character. Me and Sterling both agreed. Sterling hated a character. Me and you both agree. I'm ready for you guys both to hate me on this.
I have more to add, but okay.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah. Well, yeah. My momentum's lost. Anyway, uh, my point is that every scene with him, I think we had three. Um, maybe I'm counting the one where he's dead. I don't know. He's floating there. But he lands there and he meets him, and we get the PowerPoint presentation that Sterling didn't appreciate. Uh, I just let the it makes me feel like it's like it's a building of my heart's racing. Like, okay, we're meeting the guy. He's like explaining, hey, look what I found, and like I mean, he's resourceful. Like
Hmm.
I really liked that scene, and especially the second scene when he like he's like my heart was racing every time I watch it. Let me show you something. I'm paraphrasing, and he zooms in on it. How about you
Pepe
build
Blanca.
two? And I love the comment. Build two for the twice the price.
Yeah, I liked it too. Well, and maybe
like,
that's it. I part of why I liked the character so much was that scene. I totally agree. It's like it was the same thing as the scene where they're getting the signal, not as
yep.
intense, but it was a thing where you're like, oh, we're back in the game, baby. Jody's back in the game, baby.
I love. Like, you want to take a ride?
Oh yeah. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah.
anyway, I love those.
A little goofy, but to me in a great way. In a great
Yeah.
way. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm
so
glad
good.
I'm glad you guys enjoyed that. That's all I have to say. I'm glad.
Yeah. Let Matt talk.
I'll just no. I'll just say it. I'll just say it because I'm almost nervous to say it because I feel like you guys are going to totally disagree. One of the things I loved about this movie is 1990s. Is it felt like the 90s. You have it felt like Jurassic Park. It felt like these older 90s movies. And one of the things that brought me back to the 90s was Matthew McConaughey sucking in this movie. I think it took me back to the past, baby. This is because I did not like Matthew McConaughey's character. I thought he was goofy as fuck when he came in. His name, this sounds like I'm making it up. His name is Palmer Joss. And he comes in going, "Yeah, baby. I like God, baby, and science. I got to get an interview with this guy, baby." And I'm like, but okay, I'm like, whatever. He's this way, they bang, which I'm not being satirical here. The sex scene was great because I love the 90s where we didn't have you guys were talking about in the Eternals review. They're banging in those movies. I'm like, just let's have a kiss and then let's cut to them laying in bed. All right. I don't need all the action. All right. Let's get straight to the story, baby. So, but anyway, Matthew. So I did actually I missed it when there was implied sex scenes and not actual sex scenes, but Matthew McConaughey's story, I felt it didn't make, and you guys could like the character, that's fine, but you have to, I want a defense for this. It didn't make sense. He meets the girl and bangs her in one night, or maybe he met her at the cafe for like a couple minutes, and maybe that was a different day. But essentially, he really gets to know her and bangs her. 4 years later, he has like 2 or 3 conversations in professional settings, and then he has a conversation with her where he's like, "Honestly, the reason I didn't vote was because I didn't want you to leave me." You barely know her. You banged her 4 years ago, and you talked to her 3 times. It doesn't make any sense that you wouldn't want this girl to live her dream because you're like, "I need you to stay with me, baby." It's like, what are you talking about? He could have been cut out of the movie.
Trey, before you go, because I feel like you might have more disagreements, I didn't hate the character as much as you, Matt, but I will say it is, as far as his acting chops goes, it is a very sharp contrast to what he's doing now. Yeah. And even movies like in the 2010s that he did. He is a much better actor than he was in the 90s. It's not even that close, to be honest.
He evolved,
so,
yes.
Yeah, so part of that did kind of take me out a little bit from his character because it's just not as good of an acting performance. But what you're saying is right. It's like, would he really fall that deeply in love with her after meeting a handful of times? No, he probably wouldn't. But again, it's like I've seen that trope happen so many times in movies that it's like, okay, I guess so, but it's not. I'm not enthusiastic about it, So, Trey, go ahead.
I got plenty.
Okay.
I try to make this argument a lot, like not the exact same argument, but like something happens in a movie that you guys like, and I'm like, this doesn't make sense, and you guys, oh, it's the movie, it's the plot, it's this.
Yeah.
That's what I would say. It's just a movie. I don't feel it. I give you the first part where he bangs her and she leaves for 4 years, and like, why are you into her? But there was enough dialogue for me that like maybe he had a really connection, and he's really religious, so maybe that's part of it. That would be my defense in that in general, But there was enough dialogue.
Missionary position, huh? Is that what
exactly. Yeah. So there was enough dialogue in the back end, so I didn't really mind it. But I do understand the 4 years difference, so I get that. I think the most important thing here is, for me, is when you brought up his name. I'm going to tell you right now. Out of all the times I've seen this movie, I didn't know that was his name. So I don't care.
That's a good point.
Why would I care his name? I don't remember it.
I wouldn't.
The non-issue.
I wouldn't have remembered it either, other than I was taking notes because the main character's name is Ellie Arroway. I'm like, you ever met anyone named Arroway? It's very like movie names. I can forgive that. Look, I went on a tirade, but
I'll just say this: I didn't think his acting was bad, but I'm with you. Obviously, he's a better actor today than he
Yeah.
was.
I
I
don't
just didn't
think
think it was bad.
I don't think he's terrible. And if I'm being reasonable, I think I didn't like the character from the beginning. And if I did, I probably wouldn't have thought about or cared that much about him falling in love with her. That's the real. Just like Sterling didn't like Jeff Bezos, so then he didn't get the heart racing scene that we did. So that's why I'm saying. So it's partly that, and I just had to have a character that I didn't like that you guys liked. All right, but his acting wasn't terrible. I will say there were a couple of times, not a lot, where the writing in the movie, the dialogue, there was and this is why I didn't like the character. Some of the first introduction we have of him, he's like talking in speeches when he's talking to Drumlin saying stuff, and he just walks into the party and he like says a couple of lines, and it's like, this seems like you rehearsed this in the mirror to try to impress this girl to bang her. It doesn't sound like something a normal person would say. And I think I didn't like the character very much after there. I also feel like, to be frank, well, that could be a whole different debate. I was going to say you could almost take Matthew McConaughey out of the movie and it wouldn't affect the movie that much. But
except the ending.
The ending. I was going to say her thing with the faith did have a lot to do with the conversations because of him. So that's why it's like, it's a little debatable. That's the most that I didn't like about the movie was maybe his character, which says a lot because his character wasn't that bad. But I like the rest of the movie in that way.
Yeah. Okay. I'll just real quick. I wanted to say other kind of goofy characters. Again, not every goofy character is created equal, in my opinion. Sometimes it leaves you like with a bad taste sometimes, and sometimes you can roll with it and enjoy it. So, like, for instance, Rob Lowe's character, very stereotypical conservative.
Yeah. I'm glad you only had one scene.
Over the top.
Over the top, but there's something about Rob Lowe and the way his expressions.
I like him. You can't help it. Son of a bitch.
I mean, he's a handsome son of a bitch. But just the way he can control his face, I don't know. It's mesmerizing to me, and I enjoy watching it. So.
I didn't mind the Southern accent. What I didn't like was he was kind of doing like a weird thing with his voice where it's kind of sounded like a scratchy, like he smoked a lot or something. I'm like, just do your voice, but do it Southern. It would have been fine, but it was okay. It was fine, and I like Rob Lowe. If he had more scenes, like if he was a main character, I probably would have been real irritated by the end of it. But it was just enough. Just enough. He had one scene basically. So
yeah. I'll mention this because I think Matt will. Maybe both of you will appreciate this. I'm not sure if it was in the meeting, one of the first meetings at the White House, or when all the government shows up to the satellite place. But I'm pretty sure that it was James Earl Woods that they were saying, how are we gonna what did he say? They mentioned something about like killing the aliens or something, the defending themselves, and he's like, not if they use their laser blasters and torpedoes.
Yeah.
You remember that? Him saying that?
That was.
I was like, is Dr. Evil in this movie? Like, what's going on?
Yeah, that character was weird. I even wrote it down. There was another scene with that character. I had that too, but. You know the scene, like, before I think the message came through, where he's randomly, like, scooping the innards of a pumpkin out? And that whole scene is so weird. He's just, like,
it was
to
him?
the guy,
yeah.
And he's scraping, like, the innards of a pumpkin out, and then it never shows the pumpkin again. That's nothing to do with the movie at all. I was like, I guess they were just trying to set this up as a funny character. But then you don't see him after that. Have you noticed you never see that guy again after the first, like, 30 minutes of the movie? Funny guy.
Hey, they had to replace, them with actual experts.
Laser blasters and who says that?
Unless they have photon torpedoes, which I think is specifically a Star Wars thing, which was kind of funny to me.
Star Trek, I think. Yeah.
No, they have photons.
Same difference.
Star Wars too.
Yeah, we can get into this maybe some other time.
They have them in Star Wars. I mean, I'm not a big Star Trek fan, but I am a Star Wars fan, and they have photon torpedoes.
Okay. All right. That's good.
Secretly, I'm like, I hope I'm right about this. Cut this out.
All right.
I've got
I got nitpicks. I got so many notes on this one, but
I'll do mine first because I love your nitpicks.
Yeah, do the nitpicks. Go ahead.
All right, so I told you it would come back around about how I think this movie was trying to show how the world is more men. The men are in power. Women don't have a voice, and this is a big nitpick. When Jodie Foster gets kicked out of the Oval Office, and she's waiting for people to come out, because I think that's another thing. Like, she should be in the meeting. She found the thing. She's a scientist. She has the background. Her being on the outside looking in was stupid to me. But like we said, we had to hate somebody, and they did that. When the lady that was in charge comes out, the one that was out, like you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. She comes out of the Oval Office. I'm like, every time I see this movie, I just roll my eyes. You're like, okay, Jodie Foster's gonna get mad. She's gonna go, hey, what's going on? Why are you kicking me to the side? I'm the one that found all this. No. She's gonna go over and ask her for, hey, where do I find a nice dress?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me right now? Are you kidding me? The world's at stake, the biggest discovery in mankind, and you're gonna ask for a dress? That was writing horrible, so stupid, ridiculous. That's more than a nitpick.
Yeah, it's a little more than a nitpick. I didn't think about it that much, but that is funny.
Hey.
I just think about watching this. Like, shouldn't women empower women? Wasn't that the whole thing, the whole movement the last 20, 30 years? And this girl is pushing another woman down every time. And then she's not standing up. The writing does not let her stand up for herself. She asks for a dress.
That is true. That's a funny point. I think that's speaking maybe in the favor of. I did not read or think about the feminist side of it. I honestly just didn't think at all at being a message about women, mostly because of the fact that the woman, the White House executive lady, she's like in charge. She's higher up than any of the people in that room. I didn't quite see that as being the movie being some kind of message about women being kept down. But maybe I just need to watch it again because I could see that side of it. But I think the main character could have easily been a guy, and the whole story would have made sense the same way. But yeah, if that is the point they're making, it's definitely undercut by her asking where to buy a dress from the other woman.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Like, what? Come on.
What are we doing here? I can't defend it.
Yeah, you gotta have sex before you save the world. That's all I gotta say.
Hey, I'll defend it this way. It's Matthew McConaughey she's trying to impress. Come on, man. Wait, she already got in his pants 4 years ago. Fuck that.
I'd go McConaughey for McConaughey. I'll just say that.
Sterling, no. In filmmaking, this is a serious movie. Carl Sagan was involved.
Zemeckis, baby.
They're having another woman put another woman down throughout the time we see them in the room together, and then at a point. Important junction of the movie, she asked for a dress. Is that
I'm not defending
comedic?
the scene. I'm not defending the scene. I just was making a joke.
I actually think. Here's what I. Here's what I think it is sincerely. I actually, and maybe it just didn't play well to you. It didn't play well to me this way, but I think this is what it was. I think it was a joke because you didn't expect that to be what she was asking.
Joke?
So I think it was a joke that undercut the points you're saying. Now, like I said, I didn't see all the other stuff, but if I watched it again, maybe I would. But I think it was supposed to be a joke. I didn't laugh when I saw it. I was just like, I didn't think anything of it. I just kept, but I see what you're saying. It was a little weird.
It was just something to cut the tension with. I think that was the intention. But yeah,
whoever wrote that line in the movie should be fired.
I mean,
hopefully, maybe they're dead. I don't know.
Hopefully,
R.I.P.
All right.
That's all my notes.
You want me to do that? Yeah. I don't have a ton of nitpicks. I just had a couple. We already talked about the bomb guy and how he got up there and how he would have gotten through all security with a huge bomb strapped to his chest. But this was the 90s. I mean,
it would have been funny if he speared someone like Edge. That would have been hilarious.
Yeah, I thought he looked a little like Edge. The other nitpicks I have is why James Wood at the end. I understand if James Wood is trying to. I didn't understand. I understand James Wood at the beginning trying to defend American, United States, whatever. I didn't quite see his motivation to try so hard to argue against her point that it didn't happen. And even if he did, let's say he's just being reasonable. He's trying to be reasonable. He's like, look, as far as we see, the thing dropped, nothing happened. This is just your story. Let's say that's all he's saying. Why did he get so mad? He gets up on the table and starts yelling. I'm like, what reason does this character have to be mad about this? It didn't make sense to me what his motivation was.
Yeah, I don't know if this will answer your question, but maybe the intention was the fact that, and he kind of brought it up, was that so much money was spent on this, so much of the taxpayers' money was spent on it.
Okay, so he was trying to make it unjust, say that it was unjustified.
Yeah, because he was saying, like, we spent $1/3 trillion on a hoax, and maybe that was the intention of why he was so pissed off.
I can kind of see that. I think that justifies why he would be arguing against her, perhaps, but it still doesn't get why he's so mad, unless he was trying to play to the audience and but it just, I don't know. I think that made him look worse, not better, because it just seemed like he lost his cool. I didn't get it.
No, I totally agree. I think that would be the easiest explanation is it's for the crowd, But I wonder if there was a sequel in the back of their minds with hiding the evidence, her evidence. Like, fine, okay, at the very, very end, the White House executive lady was there to defend her when she's not around, saying, "Hey, did you see this in the notes? 18 hours, just like she said."
Yeah.
It was just like government. Like, I think another thing with this movie was showing the government's hiding stuff. That it's kind of that kind of portrayal. But I was hoping for, obviously, it's 24 years later, but no sequels have been done except for Arrival. It was a weird dialogue to put in there at the end, like wink, wink. She was there for 18 hours, but like what? I don't know. It was a weird, like James. All James said was,
and he was
okay.
And he was a very calm character the rest of it. I think it was, if I had to guess, I think realistically it was just them trying to make that scene more tense. Like, let's make the scene more emotional, more tense, and then it makes more sense why she would be almost crying. You know what I mean? Like, let's get the emotions high. But it didn't quite make sense. Third one.
Don't get me started on that.
This is my only nitpick. Like I said, Matthew McConaughey had moments here and there. I didn't think he was a great actor in this. Jodie Foster, you said she carried the movie. She carried Matthew McConaughey on her back the whole damn time. But I'm just kidding. He wasn't even in the movie that much if you think about it. But I have to say, I thought she was being pretty cheesy when she sees the planet or whatever, and she goes,
"Oh yeah,
it's poetry. Oh. They should have sent a poet. It's poetry." And like she's like, "It's beautiful." It was just too over the top, overacting.
Oh yeah,
and the lines were cheesy. It's okay if she said it was beautiful. It's beautiful. She's trying to talk into the receiver. I think she should have just said it's beautiful, and she should have let her acting do the acting. You know what I mean? She should have not said anything, because to me it took me out of it. It's too cheesy. It's too cheesy for me. And those are my big. I have a big pick, which is I don't know. I'm trying to make up new names for stuff, but this because it's bigger, way bigger than a nitpick. A big flaw for me in the movie. I do think the movie was too long, and the reason I'm saying this, we watch a lot of movies. If I'm engaged with a movie, then it can be as long as it needs to be, and I was pretty engaged with the movie, but. The reason it was long, let's be honest, was because of exposition about the politics that were happening around the world in the movie. And I was like, you know what? The politics were interesting. I do think it was actually a pretty interesting and realistic portrayal of how people might act. And I think the religious element, probably more prevalent in the 90s, but it was still, an interesting side of it. But I was like, if you look over the events of the movie, scene by scene, I just don't quite get why it had to be 2.5 hours. I think it could have been 2 hours. But I'm not really heavy on that one. That's just one of the bigger complaints I had was I was like, this could have been a 2-hour movie, and I think it probably would have been a little less boring. And I'm not saying the movie's super boring, but this is the type of movie, if I was a kid, I'd be pissed off because I'm like, where are the aliens? You know, it's just a bunch of people talking about politics. And as an adult, there were certain times where I'm like, all right, we get it. Like, you know, like, do we have to keep having scenes of like by the way, Bill Clinton, I was like, usually they have a fake president. I was like, Bill Clinton's in the movie. I'm like, how did they get him to agree to this? I looked it up. They just used footage from other stuff, but they did it in a way where I was like, and apparently the White House sent Robert Zemeckis and the production company a letter that was basically saying like, hey, we don't like that you did this. We don't condone the use of using the president this way. And they never sued or anything, but apparently they had all the rights to do it. Like they just straight up took this footage of the president and put it in the movie. They didn't ask anybody, which is pretty punk rock. But I just thought that was funny because I was like, oh, Bill Clinton must have been like on board with it. That's kind of cool, you know? But then when I was reading the trivia, I was like, holy shit.
Yeah,
Global much?
I thought it was going to be.
Well, I just mean that he would have signed, even if they were using his footage. I was like, it was so much because it wasn't just, you know, movies will show the president on TV sometimes. This was like as if they were at the conference listening to him. And I was like shocked when I found out they didn't even get the White House's approval to do that, which is cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, initially I kind of thought it was some kind of special effect for some reason.
Deepfake, yeah.
Because deepfake wasn't around as much, but yeah, maybe the same kind of principle. Yeah. But didn't Robert Zemeckis direct Forrest Gump, or is that someone else?
He did. Yeah, he did.
Okay, so you know, in that movie, they use a lot of real presidents in that
That's
movie
true.
too, and they use like different special effects. And I thought, oh, maybe they did the same thing with Bill Clinton here.
The way they cut around it was really well done. There's one scene that was bad, which is where Bill Clinton sits down at a meeting and he's clearly like green screened in, and that looks pretty bad. But other than that, the way they cut it, like there's even a part where it shows Bill Clinton on the screen and like on a TV screen while in the background you see him leaving the room, and then the black lady comes up and starts talking. And I was like, they did that pretty well. And now that you mentioned it, I was like, oh, it kind of was Forrest Gumpy the way they edited it. Anyway, that's all my stuff. Sorry.
I mean, just real quick. I know Sterling he might want to go to his final thought, right? Is that where you're going to go, Sterling?
Yeah, I'm ready.
So I want to mention this. We didn't really talk about it. Maybe real quick. Maybe you guys have real deep thoughts about it. The conversation she has with the alien being, I really thought that was really well thought out. Like honestly, like watching it again, I haven't seen it in a couple years. I'm like, I wonder what the writing room was like. Like, all right, so they did this. They made this up. How they communicated, right? And she smart that the being used her memories to portray her dad to make it a more easy going experience to communicate. He's smart enough to realize what's going on. And like just explaining how, hey, this is what's done before. You know, I really liked the dialogue. I obviously didn't get too deep because you know there's a barrier in the science right now, but I really liked it.
I liked it too. I think it's all for Carl. It's all on Carl Sagan because he wrote the book. The book is called Contact. He wrote it in the 80s. This is what the movie based on the book. And what I think was great about Carl Sagan was he's a super scientific person, but he was very poetic, and he had a great way, an optimistic way of explaining the universe. And I thought that was the most Carl Sagan of it to me, was the conversation she has with the dad. I agree, because these types of alien movies, you know, this movie's, like we said, like 25 years old. This could have aged horribly and would have been like, this doesn't make any sense. This is stupid. I thought that as far as the dialogue and stuff, I was like, this is just as profound and interesting to me today as it could have been 25 years ago. I agree. I think it was great.
Yeah, I think it definitely brought the heart of the movie kind of to the center of the whole thing. And I think it closed it very strong. So yeah, it was successful.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Trey's like, you guys aren't arguing
Thanks.
with me. What the fuck?
Well, this is new.
Are you guys strolling?
All right, Sterling, I know you're begging to go. What do you think? What's your overall thoughts?
All right. Well, overall thoughts. Again, it's a movie. It's a almost 25-year-old movie that has aged pretty well. And out of all the older movies that we've watched, that's kind of been the main criticism that it hasn't really aged that well. And so it is nice that we get to see something that has kind of stood the test of time. And I think overall the performances, for the most part, are good, especially Jodie Foster, and that's what helps kind of make this movie a success overall. So yeah, I'd say definitely watch it if you're a sci-fi fan, because I think there's some really good science fiction. And if you're into science, a lot of the jargon is probably going to relate to you a lot more than it did to me. But even though there was a lot of that, I still followed along the story pretty well, and that's a testament to how good the film was made. So
Um, I'll go ahead and go. I think this movie. I didn't know what to expect from this movie. I didn't know much about it. I just knew it was an alien related movie from the '90s, and I thought it was pretty good. And I think that it holds up surprisingly well. I forgot to mention, but I think the music and the sound and stuff. I mean, it's very. It does have like a quality to it that was very positive and uplifting. It's weird because on some aspects of it, it was sort of political, and I'd say the bulk of the movie is actually about the politics and religion revolving around what would happen if we contacted aliens, which I think is realistic because the movie's 25 years old, and a lot of the actions that the government and different people took in the movie made sense to me, and I thought it was pretty well written in that regard. But it's also just got pretty good, like great, like moments in the movie where whether it's intense or it's just emotional or whatever, and even the ending kind of scene where she actually does go through a wormhole is worth watching because it really did remind me a lot of Interstellar, but it did it so much earlier.
yeah,
So yeah, I didn't like Matthew McConaughey, but it didn't break the movie for me. And overall, I think Jodie Foster kills it on the acting, and that's what kind of carries a lot of the movie as far as the engagement with the characters. I wasn't really interested in any other characters, so I'm glad that she killed it, because if not, I might have been really bored in this movie. And that's probably my overall criticism. I think the Matthew McConaughey thing might be personally I didn't like the character, but I do think generally I could see audiences getting kind of bored with this movie. It's a little long. So that if you like the politics of it, if you like the slow process of how governments would react if an alien contacted us and how we would react to that as humans, then you definitely will like it. But otherwise, if you're into sci-fi, then it's good for that either way. But I imagine a casual person who's like, oh, I want to watch a fun movie, I don't know if this is necessarily the movie you want to put in. It's more like a deep thinking kind of movie, which is good for people who are into that. So check it out.
No, you guys said a lot of the good stuff. I mean, some good acting. They really kind of melded, like you said, politics, humanized a lot of. There's a human side to it and a sci-fi to it. So I think it really melded those together really well. I obviously we had some nitpicks, and we agreed on some and disagreed on others. And but overall, I love this movie. I do like everybody has problems with movies they like, and I have some problems with this. And no movie's perfect, but I can watch I can watch this once like I'm crazy. I could put this on once a month, just to throw it on because I think it sucks me in. I mean, because I think the dialogue for the most part is really well done. And obviously you can fast forward and skip the parts you don't like. But I really enjoy this movie. I can't wait to to watch other movies and talk about movies that kind of are maybe reference this and are kind of based on stuff that this is based on. I really can't wait because I think it's a movie that makes you think, and I like that. I change the pace because I know a lot of people nowadays are about boom boom pow and explosion here, MCU, whatever. I mean, but I really really enjoy this movie sucks me in, and I really enjoy it. But anyway, sorry about that. I do appreciate you guys watching it this week. I'm so happy you guys liked it. Maybe not liked as much as me, but other than the Matthew McConaughey thing, I'm really excited about what you said, Matt, today. But
I still stand by it as a great pick because it's a movie I've been wanting to watch for like a long time. So I'm glad I watched it.
Now we got a rival, another one that's kind of to me kind of a somewhat sequel to it. I cannot wait to watch that again. But thank you guys for joining us. Comment below. Did this movie touch you in the way it touches us? Like, does it make you think, or is it just plain bad? Maybe did it not age well for you? Comment below, subscribe, please. It helps us a lot, and we'll see you next time on the Film Schmucks.
Cut it.